Deputy Secretary of the OECD, Micheal, and Director of the Centre for Entrepreneurship, Lania, Minister Heather Humphreys, and Minister Joe O'Brien. Good afternoon to you all, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here today for the opportunity to address this esteemed gathering. And I want to pay tribute and to thank the Minister and her team at the Department of Rural Community Development for hosting and for putting a lot of the logistical organisation into this event, which has gone very well so far. The Irish Government is delighted to host this significant event for the first time. It's an important demonstration of Ireland's strong commitment to the OECD. And it's quite fáilte to go roiil léir go héireann, agus Taoiseach which been tanmh as timpeallacht áling chunta an Cavan. Taoiseach go bhaid sé deis tiile den tíoráin seo eáil a lingua porta. For those who haven't been immersed in the Gaelic language, I'm just welcome to Ireland, to this beautiful hinterland of Cavan, and I hope and trust that you get the opportunity to visit other parts of the country in this region over the coming days. I'm joining you on your second day of a very full programme of events. I expect that you've had productive discussions. We've explored opportunities for rural development close to home and right across the world. And of course the key issue being that we learn from each other's experiences, we identify best practice and adopt best practice then in our own situation. Now, as a founding member in 1961, Ireland's role in the story of the OECD is a reflection of our early and lasting commitment to multilateralism and to overcoming common and global challenges as a community of nations. That is the esprit core of Ireland since the foundation of our state, and we are 100 years old this year as one of the longest unbroken democracies, and key to that has been a commitment to multilateralism as reflected in our membership of the OECD, European Union, United Nations and other global organisations. The OECD's standing as a globally open and evidence-driven forum which engages from national to local levels of government is more vital than ever as we confront increasing challenges to the international rules-based system. It is important that the OECD remains an open and globally relevant organisation, and Ireland welcomes the recent decision to commence accession discussions with 5 countries in Europe and in Latin America. Today, I would like to reflect on the theme of the conference, building sustainable, resilient and thriving rural places, and what I believe this means for Ireland and the world in 2022 and beyond. The history of Ireland has made us acutely aware of the importance of rural life and rural places to the overall well-being and outlook of a nation. Enabling rural areas to thrive and reach their full potential unlocks wider benefits across the entire country. Of course, even as I speak of rural life and rural places, I am aware that one of the characteristics of rural areas is their lack of homogeneity. There is no single rural experience. Every town, every village and community have different challenges, different characteristics, different needs and different opportunities. There are long-held narratives about rural areas which focus on a sense of decline or reduction. The last few years, however, have clearly challenged those narratives. And I believe we must move away from discussions on rural development which are characterised by sympathy and solidarity towards those defined by optimism and opportunity. We must move past the idea that rural areas are only seen through the prism of the challenges they face, and instead focus on practical and meaningful support for communities to capitalise on the wealth of opportunities available to them. Another common narrative suggests that supporting rural or urban areas is a binary proposition. And this is of course not the case. Here in Ireland, urban and rural communities are intertwined across how we work, live and connect, be it through economic supply chains, tourism, the food we consume, cultural activities and familial connection. These interconnections are only increasing as we see our rural communities react and evolve to an ever-changing and increasingly complex world. As we gather here today, there is no escaping the fact that the global system is now experiencing significant challenges following the illegal and immoral invasion of Ukraine. As I've said many times, Ireland remains resolute in its solidarity and support for Ukraine and its people. Since March, almost 50,000 people have arrived in Ireland after fleeing Ukraine. And the Irish government is providing a range of supports to those who fled the war. And these supports include accommodation across a range of settings around the country. Community response forums in every local authority area are coordinating community-led response in the provision of assistance and support to Ukrainian refugees as they are accommodated around the country. And I'm keenly aware that families, communities, towns, villages and cities across the length and breadth of the country continue to play a key role in welcoming our Ukrainian neighbours in a time of personal and international crisis. The practical support and clear commitment shows the direct contribution of rural areas in the face of a global challenge and shows the best, in particular, of rural Ireland. While the war sadly continues, hope for the future remains. Ukraine secured the remarkable achievement of EU candidate status on the 23rd of June, a process that we enthusiastically endorsed and supported. I know the Ukrainian government has a high degree of ambition on its European path, and Minister Taoiseach's address to you all this morning highlights the importance of maintaining our support throughout this time of crisis. And we look forward to playing our part, together with Ukraine and international partners, to help deliver a safe, prosperous and sustainable future for the people of Ukraine within the European Union. We also know that the impact that the war and the current global economy is having on people across the country and the world. Unprecedented price rises for gas and electricity will have a broad impact across households and businesses, and will continue to mean that energy is a big driver of rising costs across the economy and society. These energy increases are having the biggest impact on households with lower incomes. They are trying to cope with other costs of living pressures, while an ever-increasing proportion of their income is spent on their energy needs. The Irish government is keenly aware of the growing pressures that families and businesses are under. We have heard the calls to address the rise in the cost of living, and we want to alleviate the very real challenges that people are facing. Budget 2023, which we published earlier this week, was a cost of living budget and showed our commitment to mitigating the impact of these costs on families and businesses across the country, and particularly in rural Ireland. This included a package of once-off measures worth 4.1 billion, alongside a package of normal budgetary measures worth 6.9 billion. Russia's brutal war in Ukraine and the collective European response to it also demonstrates the critical need to make urgent progress on the move away from fossil fuels. As we recover from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and deal with the impacts of the ongoing energy and food security crisis, all OECD member states are grappling with the existential crisis of our era, the transition to a climate-neutral society, which has particular implications for life in rural areas. It cannot have escaped any of our attention that the very real impacts of climate change are manifesting themselves more starkly across the planet. This summer alone, we have witnessed record temperatures, wildfires, calamitous floods, and prolonged droughts. The increasing frequency and severity of such events are further evidence, if such were needed, of the rapid destabilisation of climatic cycles that have sustained our civilizations for millennia, again having very significant implications for rural life. The nature of the climate challenge is unlike others that we have faced. It is far more complex and requires a fundamental rethinking of how we work, how we travel, use our land and source our energy, again with major implications for rural life. Successfully addressing the challenge, sufficiently reducing our emissions, and adapting to the climate change that is now unavoidable cuts to the core of how we have constructed our economies and societies over the past 2 centuries. Here in Ireland, our programme for government sets out a strong framework for climate action and places it at the heart of all our work. We have enacted a new legal framework that sets binding emissions reduction targets and provides the legislative tools to achieve the ambitious targets we have set in law. We have adopted a carbon budget programme earlier this year and recently reached agreement on sectoral emission ceilings for the electricity, transport, buildings, industry and agriculture sectors, delivering on a key programme for government commitment. The ceilings set maximum limits on greenhouse gas emissions for each of these sectors to the end of the decade to ensure they remain within the legally binding carbon budgets. And while openly acknowledging that achieving these targets will be very challenging, the carbon budgets and sectoral emission ceilings are essential steps in meeting them. No household, no business, no community, be it urban or rural, no geography or sector, can be unaffected by this shared, all-encompassing but necessary transition. Rural and urban regions alike will need to play their part. And however, I am confident that as we take this journey together, those targets can be achieved. Of course, the government recognises that as we work towards carbon neutrality, it is vital that we ensure that nobody is left behind and that a just transition pathway be found, one which delivers alternative job opportunities to those most affected, particularly in industries or areas where traditional practices have to be discarded. The government established a National Just Transition Fund in 2020, which will support initially Ireland's wider Midlands region to address the impact of the transition out of peat for electricity generation. This fund is supporting innovative projects and employment that contribute to the economic, social and environmental sustainability of the wider Midlands region, just south of where we are now. Supporting inclusion in rural areas will be key in the face of these transitions. Inclusive and sustainable economic growth alongside social cohesion in rural regions must be a priority. Over the last few years, we have seen our rural communities become more diverse through immigration and a reimagining of how we live and work through technological advances. And this has brought energy, enthusiasm and innovation into rural communities. And that has been manifested in Mr Humphrey's initiative around innovation hubs, for example, with dramatic progress made in 2 years, about 210, and the target of 400 by 2025 being very much on target. Maintaining this momentum of movement and resulting diversity into rural areas is not a hardship or a charitable act, it's a privilege and a duty so that we can ensure that rural places can thrive for generations to come. Ensuring the long-term vitality of our rural places requires us to acknowledge and amplify the voice and contribution of women, youth, older people, ethnic minorities, members of the LGBTI+ community and other groups who call our rural communities home. It is government's role to provide the environment in which all this can happen. Developing new ways to understand and measure progress in all areas of the country in a holistic way has also been a priority for this government and my department in particular. The Wellbeing Framework is a programme for government commitment to measure how we are doing overall as a country and to improve our understanding of the quality of life in Ireland. And it does this by bringing economic, societal and environmental impacts together under one framework. Importantly, it places a particular focus on equality and sustaining well-being into the future. This new framework is now featuring in our budgetary process. Over time, embedding this framework in our policy-making system will improve the impact of public policy on people's lives. Inclusion is at the heart of this approach, facilitating all of our people to live fulfilling and meaningful lives with dignity. It really is in tandem with the late Bobby Kennedy's renowned speech on what GDP measures, or rather what it does not measure. Bobby Kennedy said that GDP measures everything but that which makes life worthwhile. And our well-being framework is about addressing that issue in terms of measuring more comprehensively and holistically what life in Ireland needs to be about the quality of that life. And this approach to measuring the impact of public policy on the well-being of individuals and communities will, of course, be particularly relevant to our rural communities. Because we want to see communities on the ground enabled and empowered to build their own capacity to achieve progress by identifying their own priorities and the responses to them. And we know that there is a need to involve our communities and ensure that not only are their voices heard, but that they are supported to lead change. And this is a point that the Deputy General Secretary just made to us in our discussions earlier before the speaking session commenced. For this reason, our rural future, Ireland's national rural development policy, is informed by extensive consultation with people right across rural Ireland. It offers a new approach to rural development policy for Ireland and adopts a more strategic, ambitious and holistic approach to investing in and maximising opportunities for rural areas. It crosses issues such as economic growth, education, transport, healthcare and well-being, planning and the environment. Under our National Development Plan, a total of close to €1 billion has been committed to investment in rural and community development projects to 2025. And this increased funding signals our government's commitment to ensuring strong implementation of our rural future to reach its potential to be transformative for rural areas. Last year also, as a part of our National Development Plan, we set out an unprecedented commitment of €3.5 billion for all island investment out to 2030, including at least €1 billion from the government's Shared Island Fund. The Shared Island Initiative aims to harness the full potential of the Good Friday Agreement, which is the bedrock of our peace process and political and community relations on this island. Rural communities have always been connected in our border regions, and we need to exploit this to realise the potential of these areas. And through the Shared Island Initiative, we have particularly focused on cross-border rural areas on the island, and particularly encouraging from various local partnerships, local councils, applications and projects and ideas to develop enterprise, education, health and a range of other initiatives. Because working through all island partnerships, we're working to invest in communities for a more connected, sustainable, prosperous island for all, and that includes enabling rural and community development on a shared island. And later today in Cavan, I'll be announcing the outcome of a €5 million project, which involves local authorities combining north, south on specific ideas and proposals to enable them to bring the projects to project stage. And that's an example of what we've spoken about earlier in terms of empowering local communities, in this case through local authorities, to develop projects from the ground up that can be of benefit to rural Ireland. With the resources and talent available in rural areas, our rural communities and economies can play a pivotal role in shaping our collective future. The changing nature of how we live and work and the interdependence between urban and rural areas highlights how our national well-being depends on the strength and resilience of our rural places. Working together will be fundamental to overcoming the many global challenges we are facing. The Cavan OECD roadmap that will be launched today is a unique opportunity to shape in a very real way the work programme of the OECD on rural development. Its drive to support countries to tackle today's challenging environment is an important piece of work and will directly support the efforts of all member states. The discussions that have already taken place at this conference